Hi, and welcome to another edition of Better Minneapolis. Today I'm here with Community Safety Commissioner Todd Barnette. Welcome.
Thank you, thank you.
And we're down here at City Hall, which is great. You must be happy to be back in the building. It's so nice.
I am happy to be back here, yes.
So, why don't we start with, could you remind people sort of what your jurisdiction is? What are all the departments that you cover?
Right, so there's 5 departments under me, fire, police, 911, emergency management, and neighborhood safety. So those are the 5 departments under the Office of Community Safety. And the rest of the departments, I tell people, are under the COO. Okay. And there's 17 of those, so yeah, 5 for me.
So one of the reasons I asked if I could interview you today is you had this great op-ed piece in the paper a few weeks ago, maybe end of January, where you sort of talked about what was going on in the city and really got into a lot of the issues involved there with like the MPD interacting with federal agents and stuff.
Yes, yes.
So could you maybe start by just saying what you feel like the relationship is right now between MPD and federal immigration?
Well, there's really, when it comes to the civil enforcement of immigration activity, there is no real relationship. There's no communication between our police department and the federal government as far as the immigration activities. It hasn't been before November, December, and it hasn't been since. So there's no actual communication going on.
Is that a good thing or a bad thing? I mean, I'm not sure what the ordinance that was written says with regard to that, but
Right.
It seems like there's a lot of suspicion around it, but that it would maybe even be a good thing if you knew like something was being raided or so. What's the ideal level of communication?
Well, let me say this. We've had federal civil immigration activity before November. I mean, that's gone on for a long time. I mean, that hasn't changed where we didn't have any communication. So I don't want people to think like all of a sudden communication makes things better. Mm-hmm. What I'm trying to get at is that what changed was about 3,000 federal agents here when we have 600 police officers, and those 600 are not on duty at the same time. It's not that they're on duty at the same time. But also, I think what's important to mention is that when you talk about communication or not, the thing that changed when this large number of federal agents came here were the tactics, and the tactics that we hadn't seen before. Mm-hmm. So if you would say, going back to the time before the federal agents came in and there was no communications and things were not such that our residents were terrorized, people were still going to work, kids were going to school, I would rather have that and no communication than to have communication. So that's a long way to say, I don't know exactly what communication with the federal immigration enforcement leaders or agents would give us with that type of tactics that they've been using. I just don't know that we get anything from that, especially because we have a separation ordinance, and that separation ordinance, basically says not just Minneapolis police, but any Minneapolis employee cannot support, participate, in any way aid, federal immigration activity. So I don't know exactly what the communication could be for us that would be helpful.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah.
So just to read a little bit of what you wrote, which I thought was very good, was the you said, our officers cannot override a federal agent's decision to arrest someone under federal law, but it is our job to protect life, prevent serious harm, and preserve public order on behalf of everyone and regardless of immigration status. If a situation becomes life-threatening, involves actual or imminent violence, or involves destruction of property, Minneapolis police may respond to protect public safety. What exactly does that mean to you? Like, what would cause them to respond? I mean, what would you want people to take away from that?
Jerry, I was trying to explain a really complex issue, and maybe I can try to explain it this way, because this is unprecedented territory, and we've never had to be here before, and so if we're going to take our criminal task force that we work with federal agents all the time, separate from immigration. Mm-hmm. And so we work with them jointly and collaboratively to arrest bad people all the time. So if there was a situation like that where they were working together, one of our officers would probably go back and report it to a supervisor, and that supervisor would probably file a complaint with that particular agency to say this is the behavior our officer observed and had to stop, or this is the behavior our officer observed that wasn't in line with our policies, right? I mean, so we would work it that way. Also, I want to tell people that we've not been in positions where we would actively arrest another law enforcement officer on a scene. Yeah. So normally what would happen if some law enforcement officer was going to be arrested, where the residency lives, that local law enforcement agency would work with the authority that was trying to arrest them to make sure that happened safely, right? Whether that was at work where they knew his gun was secured before they came to talk to him or her, but they would make sure the situation was safe to prevent any danger for that person or someone. So I want to say that's normally what would happen. So in this situation where we are is no communication with the federal government. We would get a 911 call that comes into our 911 center. That call taker would take that information and try to get as accurate information as they could get from the person, relay that to the Minneapolis officer, lieutenant, or sergeant, or commander, whoever's on duty for that specific thing, to say whether they should dispatch someone or not. Mm-hmm. The reason why I say that is we've been in situations where we've had to evolve to the point of having someone on from MPD 24/7 to say and try to make a decision whether to send someone. Yeah. So once that person is dispatched and sent, remember that body cam is going to be on, and they're only going to record from the time that they get there. What's been great is citizens been recording things beforehand, but that officer might not know that. Mm-hmm. And what makes it so difficult for the officer is in that moment, you're asking them to decide whether that particular federal agent is acting within their authority, and then what to do, how to intervene. And if they intervene when the officer is has authority to arrest and do the things that they're doing, and not knowing what happened beforehand, they could be charged with obstructing justice at the federal level. So that makes this very difficult for our officers. If the situation is bad, they will have to intervene. And you've seen them do things to de-escalate the situation. And we know that the presence of ICE has made things escalate where we had large crowds, we had objects thrown at people. I mean, and that has been dangerous for everyone, although the majority of our residents have been peaceful, demonstrating everything. We've removed as fast as we can those officers out of that situation, meaning the federal law enforcement officers out. so that that will de-escalate, because that's the training our officers have. De-escalate first, and then try to do what we can. That's a long way just to say, boy, are we in some really murky gray area to say exactly when the officer would intervene. But if it's egregious and they have to, it's just uncharted territory for us.
Yeah, I mean, I think what you just outlined is a very measured, sort of process-oriented response, right? And what comes to mind is something like, and I know this was the Hennepin County Sheriff's.
Right, yep.
But, you know, where ICE went into the courthouse right over here.
Yes.
And got someone, and the Hennepin County Sheriff, they basically just let him walk out with the guy. And I think a lot of people were very upset about that. But to your point, it's very murky. I mean, what were they to do? I don't know, what were they supposed to sort of confront the federal agents and free this person?
And not knowing what has happened more than likely, right? Because there's no communication, right? And normally what you would have is that would have ended, someone would have filed a complaint, someone would have talked to the witnesses, they would review video, they would have an attorney, prosecutor, whether it's federal, county, or city, review all of that evidence and then make a decision, was that person acting within their legal authority? And you're asking a law enforcement officer to do that quickly.
And for that process, that after arrest process that you just described to play out, would assume that like that person hasn't been put on a flight and sent to Texas.
Yes, right, that they're not already gone.
Yeah.
Right, that's so true.
It is just a really difficult situation. And do you think that kind of your office has learned things that if they were to, say, do another surge before the election or something, that you'll be more prepared for it this time, or have like different processes in place, or what?
What I would say is that we evolved from when the first 100 or so federal agents or officers came in late November, beginning December, so that like 3,000 got here. I mean, we didn't have a MPD officer on duty to review whether it's possible for an officer to go and make sure they don't violate the separation ordinance, because that 911 call taker couldn't, right? We evolved at how we talk to people, from the 911 call taker trying to now get specific information, right? That all evolved because of the tactics that were used. And so I think one of the big things that I don't want to dismiss here is not just us evolving, it's not just us who reached a point, I think, to be an example for the rest of the country on how to respond, but it was our residents of Minneapolis, it was our suburban residents coming into Minneapolis to observe peacefully, protest peacefully, gather evidence with videos and things that we wouldn't have had without them. I mean, they were on the front line getting information to us. I mean, really, that is the residents' response that was just overwhelmingly positive. On the one hand, you had the residents who were afraid to go out their home, afraid to go to businesses, afraid to go to work, kids afraid to go to school. And then you had this wonderful, amazing community of residents who were, hey, I'll go get your groceries. Hey, I'll walk your kid to school. What can I do to help in that big arms around community that was happening? Can't be dismissed on the response. I know people look at us, right?
And I think it's still happening, right?
Yes.
So in your mind, has the drawdown been accomplished, right? I mean, I've heard different kind of takes, and I mean, Representative Angie Craig and Ilhan Omar visited, this, and there's like nobody there apparently, but then I see these reports that, you know, the flights out of the airport are still continuing, and people that I know that are busy, have been busy doing the grocery runs and stuff, they're still busy doing them. So where are we halfway to drawdown? Are we at the, you know, in your mind, where are we at with the getting back to normal, if you will?
I'll talk about two things. One is that we don't have communication with the federal government. We're like everyone else trying to figure this out. Like, are they really gone? I mean, we're hopeful, but we still want to verify that the numbers are going down. So we're like everyone else in that respect of the different avenues of trying to get information to really bring some comfort to our residents and visitors that we're back in a safe place. The second thing I would say that I think you really touched on is that we really have to think about this as long-term recovery. I don't see that the impact that this surge has had on the city of Minneapolis, the state of Minnesota, that we're going to recover in 30 days. That's just not possible. There are businesses that are closed. There's businesses that are struggling right now. There are people that are afraid to go out, people not going to work. I mean, this is going to be huge. You hear about kids and the impact this has had on their mental health. And so I just really think the recovery part for us is long term.
Yeah.
I don't know when that ends, but we just have to look at, as city government, what can we do in this recovery point. I hope that we're moving to being in a recovery. And I think you heard Mayor Fry, you heard Governor Walz talk about the financial impact in asking for assistance for the city, asking for assistance from the state and the federal government, just to try to get back to what we hope to be normal. But I say to, you know, my friends and other people that ask, right now, every law enforcement activity, I shouldn't say every, a lot of our law enforcement activity that occurs used to occur without a call to 911. And what I mean by that is citizens see some activity, they're calling 911 still because they think it's ICE.
Right.
And then we have to verify whether or not that's the case. I think we're forever in that place because of the surge, that people will be very nervous until they feel comfortable that the activity that's happened is non-ICE related. And that's gonna be a struggle.
So along those lines of kind of recording, has MPD sort of, I mean, obviously the 911 calls are there, probably 311 calls are there. Is there other documentation that you think people will be wanting to see around, you know, how many incidents people, you know, MPD responded to, things like that?
Here's been one of the difficulties with really what I would say is knowing accurate information. So I'm going to use 911 as an example. So the call comes in that there's ICE activity, come help us. Someone's in a car, they're breaking windows. We dispatch a call. Normally that would just come in normal dispatch. There wasn't a code for ICE. There wasn't a code for federal enforcement of immigration. There was no code in our system to be able to go back and look at that. So in order for us to go back and look at some of this stuff, we would have to pull every single one of those and then figure out what was the outcome. It could be that, let's say, Dakota County was executing a warrant of a murder suspect in a car. Someone thought it was ICE. We don't know that until that's over, but in our system, it might have come in at ICE, but on the outcome, it was something different. And we never prepared for that. So we're really gonna have to dig in to get out accurate information on number of calls and actually, was it ICE activity or not?
Yeah. So if I understand you correctly, just kind of thinking about how databases operate is what you're talking about.
Yes.
Is that each call has some kind of label as to what it pertains to, whether it's a violent crime maybe or robbery, whatever, but the system didn't have an ICE.
Right,
It's not easy to just go in and say, show me all the 711 calls or whatever the code would be, and it pulls up everything.
right, so let's say, easy one, ICE vehicle crashes into a civilian car, right? Dispatch would have said traffic accident,
Right.
right? That's what it would have came, maybe we don't even know it was ICE related, it would come in as a traffic accident.
Right.
That's how that code would come in. If we knew it was ICE, that code is probably traffic accident, maybe a note in there that they could put in a note what it actually was, but to your point, no actual code for that.
I think that's good to understand, because I can certainly see people feeling like you should be able to pull up a report like that.
Right.
And it sounds like there's a lot more investigation needed and to come up with even just that reporting.
And to make sure it's accurate across all, right? Call comes in, what do we have? NPD responded. What was that? Call comes in, maybe our behavioral crisis team went out.
Right.
Because there's a mental health thing, and they got there and it was actually ICE related. I mean, there's so many different avenues to try to gather this information and try to figure that out to make sure we're being accurate with it,
Right.
and as least accurate as possible.
Yeah, I can see how it'd be, just that would be complicated to come up with that, and probably a lot of hours, right?
Right,
So that
right.
kind of leads me to my next question.
Yeah.
I've heard, them talking about how many, I think I heard that like you've used your overtime budget already for the year now. So, and that was a contentious issue last year, was overtime budget. So what happens now? I mean, do you have to like go and ask for like an increase in overtime budget? Do you end up starting to cut hours? How do you handle this? Because clearly it wasn't expected, it wasn't built into the original budget, which probably was written last March, right? So.
Right. No, you asked some really good questions. First of all, we have to make sure that we stay true to the core values for all the city and then for our community safety departments. But it's affected all of the departments, right? So, everyone talks about police.
Mm-hmm.
It's reported that in January, the police were at $5 million in overtime. I mean, no one expected that. We know, and I don't have a number for you, but we know that in the month of January, fire department had a huge increase in overtime because of the activity that was going on. We've had to have all hands on deck across the enterprise, so our 911 department as well has had to call in people to take the increase in calls volume come in. We know that our emergency management, who's led a lot of this, I just had a meeting with the director of emergency management earlier this morning, and we've been having the emergency operations center open 24/7. I mean, so.
And what's her name again?
Yes,
Because I feel like I've seen her leading press conferences.
Yes.
And it's like.
Director, her name is Director, first name is not Director, first name is Rachel Sayer is her name. And so what people might not know is that, she's leading our conference calls at 11:30 every day. to talk about what's going on. I mean, so for her small team of people, is that more than I think 10 or so, to have to take on this enormous burden at this time unexpectedly and unprecedented. I mean, they're affected. Our neighborhood safety department's affected on trying to make sure that we get folks from the community organizations to help make sure our community are getting things that they need. So, and then you look outside of that, we've had Public Works working. We had our communications team working overtime. It's just for the city, it's going to be enormous budget impact for the amount of hours that people have put in over these last 2-3 months.
And so how do you resolve that though?
Right.
I mean, do you have to like go back and say, hey, we need a mid-year budget thing? I mean, I don't even think the city has a process for doing that, right? So you just go over budget
This is probably why I went to law school and didn't pursue any career math, but I think our finance department's going to have to look at this. There is a way to ask for a supplemental budget. I personally don't know the process for that, and I'm not sure, knowing that we have some limitations with budgets already, what is feasible. And I think that's one reason you've heard the mayor say, we're going to have to ask for some financial assistance from the state and from the feds. I just don't know.
Can always ask.
Right. I just don't. Right. We can ask, but just not knowing we don't even know right now what the actual impact is.
Yeah.
We've done some preliminary stuff, but we don't actually know the number right now because, like I said earlier, there's going to be some long-term impacts here and effects that we have to look at.
So what you described sounds pretty stressful across all your departments on a lot of people. And there's two things, my real question is what does morale look like now after going through this? Because it's been time away from families, overtime is stressful, even if you're getting paid for it, stuff like that. So that's the first part of my question. Let's start there. How's morale?
That's one where I have concerns, to your point, because there have been all hands on deck with not just the departments under me, but other departments where time off has been postponed or canceled.
Right.
Vacations have.
This is prime Mexico time.
People want to get out of Minnesota in the winter.
Florida, Arizona, sure.
Yep, and then there's those people that want to get off up north in the winter as well.
Yeah.
And they haven't been able to do that. We've stressed to our employees within the entire city what's available for them as far as mental health services and things like that. We know for a lot of our folks who have been in police and fire and 911, they are somewhat accustomed to emergencies. We've been through a lot of them in the last couple of years, but this here is different. It feels different. And so we've just been trying to get to a point where we can allow people more time off. We are constantly trying to make sure people know about the services that are available for them and their families because we know this is very stressful. I think the positive part about this is that a lot of our residents have just been very appreciative of the city's response from its employees. And you hear stories of gratitude from our residents and visitors who've been here and also from around the United States. I mean, that's been good, but we need to get back to a point where our employees aren't trying to figure out when can they get back home to
Right.
their family? And when is there a good time for them to take time off? But we're trying our best to get there, because we know that this can have an effect on people's mental health and morale. Yeah.
Okay. So, just to move on maybe to a different subject, I mean, obviously, the response to ICE is a huge one. But kind of related to ICE, one of the big criticisms there was like ICE agents not having proper training, not, obviously 2 people were shot and killed that shouldn't have been. But there's also questions about training for our MPD, and one of the topics that I've seen come up is surrounding the facility, right? This fairly
Yes.
expensive training and wellness facility that I think is for multiple departments, maybe not just the police. And the budget was cut there, I think, through an amendment. How is that going to impact your department's ability to train and do the things that you need to do to make sure that, you know, we have a well-trained safety department?
Yeah, I think what you're referring to is the Community Safety Training and Wellness Center. I believe $5 million for 2025 was appropriated from that project. We internally have been working to try to come up with a way to get that project back on track because of the benefits that we've seen to being able to have cross-department exercises together. I think you've heard the mayor talk about our trip as a city out to Emmitsburg. I think that was in 2024, where we all went out there. It was sort of at the end of the after action report where we all trained one large room and worked together. And I think you've seen, or at least I hope our citizens have seen, the city respond in a holistic way to incidents, whether that was annunciation or with the way we respond to ICE, that we've really brought all of our departments to bear to help in how we prepare, how we respond, how we recover, what we learn to do it better later. So the Training and Wellness Center is for all of our departments, but specifically when you look at it, it's for our police department, fire, 911, emergency management, and neighborhood safety, those community safety departments. One of the things that happened after the death of George Floyd was that they created the Office of Community Safety to break down these silos that they were in, and there's plenty of reports that talk about that. But this way, when we have that building, is to, one, have state-of-the-art facility with state-of-the-art training, all of those best practices that we can have. And right now, the places that we are able to do that training are inadequate. So even though we responded well and we can use our emergency operation training facility where we can bring other jurisdictions in, we can bring other departments in, we've really outgrown that space. And if we want to bring our BCR, Behavioral Crisis Unit, or other, like Hennepin County's EMS or something like that, bring them all in for training, we would like to have a place to do that. And so that building's super important to how we respond as a city. Again, later, and there are some requirements for us as part of the settlement agreement and the consent decree on facilities and how we need to do training and having co-responses with mental health and police response. And so it's so important that we get back on track with this building and being able to have it for our city. Yeah.
And it's downtown here? Is that right, where it's planned?
We are in the process of, and I think people will know within the next couple of weeks, of really identifying a property that we think would work. The
Okay.
design of the building is not there yet, but first we have to identify a property that meets the qualifications or requirements that we need. Because you have to think, we don't have a place really where you could drive a fire truck in. I mean, you have the emergency operations center, don't get me wrong, but if you had fire and police responding together, we want that type of co-response where we can have real live scenarios for our folks in a safe setting. And to be able to do that and have control over that property is important for us to sort of meet some of the deadlines that we have for ourselves. So,
Okay, so no facility's been identified yet. I guess I didn't I didn't realize that. I thought,
we want to first identify the property, which I think people will find out in the next couple of weeks. I'm just not at liberty to talk about that, but being able to identify the property, purchase the property, and that has to be approved by council. Once that's approved by council, we can move to what type of structure and development. And this is year long, it's a couple year project to open because property, then construction,
right.
And then you move people in. So it's a process that will take place over the next couple of years. Yes.
Okay, thank you. So one process I'll share that I think people are a little frustrated around is the third precinct.
Okay. Yes.
Because that's been like 6 years. And so people are wondering, and there's a building, and I know I've seen like RFPs have gone out for community partners there.
Yes.
Maybe you could help people understand like when's that going to open, what's the obstacles, and then if partners have been chosen, who are they?
Right. And so I will say I'm frustrated as well. I think we all are in situations where we might have planned major construction in our house and things aren't going as planned and there's delays, and that certainly has happened here, that we haven't opened that building as soon as we would like to. But I have been assured that by this summer the construction will start, and I'm hoping that we will be able to move in late this year, 2026. That is my hope. We have done, I think, everything possible because I know that where our third precinct officers are in, that they've been in there too long, and it's not adequate for what we want to represent, that we care for our officers, and that's not a good representation. And having a new space will be, and I think they've gotten some good examples from our first precinct. Our third precinct inspector Gomez has really talked to Inspector Peterson of the first precinct how they went about the needs and things that they wanted, and great job out there. And now we need to do that for our South Minneapolis Community Safety Center. Who has been chosen? I'm sorry, Terry, I cannot remember off the top of my head right now.
Well, I think the important
but,
thing that I was told to make
yes.
sure I communicated is that people are a little frustrated that, residents in the neighborhood don't have a precinct to go to and file reports or do what they need to do. So
I agree. One of the things that we are disappointed in is that we haven't opened that building, and we're trying our best to get it open. And like I said, we want to make sure that we're in construction this summer and that we are opening that building by the end of the year. Yes.
Okay, great. Neighborhood safety. I think we spoke last like a year and a half ago. Yes. I think the program was kind of just getting its reorganized, if you will.
Yes.
I know from talking to Amanda Harrington, there's been a lot of review of vendors. There's been new contracting procedures put in place. I think a couple pilots happened this summer on Franklin and East Lake.
Yes.
So how are things going? Are we seeing progress? Do you think it's going to be an important tool coming up this summer? Or?
Yes, I think for me and trying to move the needle here with neighborhood safety, I think we've done a good job with Director Harrington being there as their leader, and that she has really focused in on the employees there and what is reasonable that they can get out the door and how can they do it. I think when we spoke, I talked about, there was a lot of money poured into neighborhood safety, and how do we get them in a place, in a structure where they could really get things out the door. They had to hire some key to establish new positions and directors to be able to monitor things that came in and to be able to get projects out the door. And I think they've done a good job. I think what you're referring to is our safety ambassadors along that corridor who've been out there. Anecdotally, we've gotten some really good responses for that. And our hope, even in a tight budget, is that we can really hone in on these key initiatives and also look at what our priorities are and really just focus in on those. I know that 2026 is going to be tough budget, like we talked about earlier with overtime just in general and what has happened. So we're going to have to get to a point of evaluating where we are because no one expected this to happen at the beginning of the year. We're really going to have to evaluate that and reprioritize in all of our departments. What now are our goals that we can accomplish by the end of 2026 because of just what has happened. And so I know Director Harrington has been working on that. But I think they're in a good place. I say all that to say I think they're in a good place.
I'll share a goal I think I've heard a lot about is
Yes.
that people want to see more focus on uptown. And I know like when you rolled out the 2 pilots,
Yes.
There was some misunderstanding. Some people thought it was coming to uptown.
Yes.
And the hope was that these pilots would, kind of learn from them and then maybe be able to expand. Is expansion on the list this year, do you think? Or
I don't know yet.
Okay.
And the reason why, and I was out, I can't remember exactly, 6-9 months ago, in Uptown, they had a big meeting with residents and business owners there. And
they're motivated.
they are motivated, and they asked me point blank, when could they get it? And I said, I don't know yet. Unfortunately, with we're in a different position with the city's budget, and we're in a different position because of the surge and how we're going to have to prioritize. I just don't know yet, Terry, where that is. I do know that Director Harrington and her staff will look at that and see where it goes. There's no doubt that the safety ambassadors, in my mind, without the actual research, seem to provide value. And it's what can we do to make sure that they stay and that we expand. And I just don't know how quickly we can do it.
Okay. Couple final questions. I know we're running out of time here. The fire department, Chief Brian Tyner
Yes.
left after 30 years.
Yes.
That's a big position to fill. Melanie Rucker is the appointed interim chief. How long until there's an actual chief, and is there like a nationwide search going on, or do you kind of just watch and see how things go? What's happening there?
Chief Tyner retired, but he's not really retired because he went over to work for Phyllis Wheatley. And so, great opportunity for him to continue his public service. Chief Rucker, interim Chief Rucker, is doing a great job. While we do a national search, we're going to do a national search for our next chief. People have asked me this question before, whether that's in the city or outside of the city. What are you doing? We really have consulted with some folks and really want to make sure we do this right and target the right folks to bring in the best person here. So we are going to do a national search. We are in the process now where we're looking at when we can post the position. So I'm hoping within the next month or so we'll have it posted. When people ask about when will that person start, that really depends on who we select and where are they. I think if it's a person within our fire department, it's probably a little bit sooner. Mm-hmm. If that person is outside of our fire department and they have some other obligations that they need to fulfill before they leave, that could be longer. I just don't know until we actually select that person and know when they could start. People sometimes have to they're in the middle of a huge project that they need to finish up or hand off to someone. So when I know, I will gladly let other people know as well. So.
And one thing they will be overseeing was big change, I guess, last year where they moved the behavioral crisis unit into the fire department. How is that transition going? Has it been, smooth sailing or bumpy, or how does it look?
Chief Tyner and I, prior to it being moved, we had discussions about it, because when you looked around, when I first got here, when I looked around the country, this service was provided through fire departments in other cities, and so Chief Tyner and I had that discussion. We just hadn't planned to move it as soon as the council asked us to.
Okay.
But council had that authority. It came under fire. I think that the fire department has done a good job at integrating the behavioral crisis response into what they do. In fact, Chief Rucker has really spearheaded this integration into how this is going to happen. So I think with it happening as quickly as it did, I think it went as smooth as possible. But this contract will end at the end of August, so people will see an RFP go out for this in the next couple of months.
And when you say, does that mean the current unit is an outside vendor?
Right, it's outside vendor. It's Canopy Roots,
yeah,
right? It's an outside vendor.
Okay.
And the life of this contract will end, and so we'll have to do another RFP for the service. It's a valuable service.
Right.
I mean, I think.
Have you seen call volumes change because of what's going on with ICE, or over the?
That's a good question. I don't know. I have not specifically looked at if behavioral crisis response calls have gone up. I have not looked at that. But we know that the BCR, Behavioral Crisis Response Team, has definitely taken a lot of calls from our other first responders, and not having to send police in that respect. They've done a very good job with that.
Great.
Yes.
Well, that's all the questions I have for you today.
All right.
Is there anything we didn't cover that you wanted to mention? Or?
No, still just a lot of gratitude to our residents in the state of Minnesota, specifically our residents in Minneapolis, who've just handled this Metro surge with being peaceful. and being able to document things has just been phenomenal for where we are today, and just have a lot of gratitude to community, really. Yeah.
All right.
Thank you.
Great.
All
Thank
right.
you.